Thank you for staying with us. It's time now to take a look at stories making headlines on the front page of Nigeria newspapers. And I begin with the Punch newspaper. The major story here says, Salah, current pains necessary, says Tinubu, governors preach unity. Current pains necessary, says Tinubu, governors preach unity. President assures Nigerians of better days. PDP lambasts APC. Governors demand peaceful coexistence as Muslims celebrate Salah. All the details on the front page of the Punch newspaper. And to the Guardian newspaper now, Salah, Presidency, PDP trade blames over bleak low-key celebrations. Presidency, PDP trade blames over bleak low-key celebrations. All the details on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. Now to the front page of the Nigeria News Direct. APC, PDP, Labour Party trade words on impact of Tinubu's policies. APC, PDP, Labour Party trade words on impact of Tinubu's policies. You find all the details on the front page of the Nigerian News Direct. And to the Vanguard newspaper now, Presidency fires back at PDP, Labour Party over alleged anti-people policies. PDP cautions APC federal government alleges anti-people policies, tasks Nigerians on prayers over economic hardship. Tinubu's government lives in opulence while Nigerians groan. That's what the Labour Party is saying. You find all the details on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper. Kemi.
Daily Trust is next, and stakeholders are reported to be commenting on economic reforms. Some say they are hasty and could worsen poverty. That's on Daily Trust. It also adds that reforms could push 7.1 million Nigerians into poverty by year end. That's according to the World Bank. And an analyst, Professor Waleke, is quoted as saying that it is important that these reforms are enforced. Let's check out the leadership newspaper. Sultan has a message for political leaders, and he says, shed your extravagant lifestyle for Nigeria's sake. Shed your extravagant lifestyle for Nigeria's sake is on the front page of the leadership. The Business Day says 4.4 trillion naira cash bonanza for federal government, others, as the FAAC agency gets boost. 4.4 trillion naira cash bonanza for federal government and others on the Business Day. On the Daily Times newspaper, the lead story there is alleged gross misconduct with Niger Delta ex-militants handing the federal government a 7-day ultimatum regarding an alleged gross misconduct. Details are on the Daily Times. And finally, his first news, he calls this an exclusive. DSS relocates former EFCC chairman Bauer to private facility for intense grilling. A suspended EFCC boss remains adamant, refuses to write statement in custody. That's on the first news, and that's it.
Kemi, let's look at this story talking about reactions trailing government's policies, especially economic policies in recent times. Beginning with May the 29th statement or declaration, fuel subsidy is gone. And then we look at the unification of the foreign exchange and the other parties, talking about PDP, Labour Party, have been reacting to some of this party, as well as stakeholders, a majority of persons. Now, I recall that during the campaigns, most of these parties, these major parties, had said that it was necessary that the fuel subsidy be removed. And we're beginning to see them react now to some of the moves made by government, saying that they are just saying that this move by the government is quite hasty. They are just saying it is anti-people and that government is living in opulence while Nigerians are groaning. And it begs the question, when was it going to be the right time for government to have taken some of the decisions it took? Because we saw reactions even from the stock market, like we heard the president of the Senate say, and we saw international bodies and organizations, even the UK government, agreeing with the move by the president to have removed fuel subsidy. And yes, there are reports that about 7.1 million Nigerians, if care isn't taken, will be pushed to the poverty line by the end of the year, if care is not taken, if the situation on the ground is not properly handled. So I believe that what governments, and the president has said that right now, this is the time to make sacrifices. He understands what Nigerians are going through. We spoke to this yesterday, the fact that he is sensitive to the fact that Nigerians are groaning and that Nigerians have gone beyond the limit of tightening their belt as it is. But how is the government going to manage this situation such that we do not see 7.1 million Nigerians pushed to the poverty line is the next question.
And the World Bank that voiced out this concern is also quoted earlier this week to have hailed the government for the policies so far, noting that a substantial number of Nigerians had already, fallen into poverty in the first 6 months of the year. And we already have an established 133 million Nigerians who are multidimensionally poor. So this possibility of more Nigerians, sliding into poverty is a concern. But the federal government has said it is mindful of the implications and it is working with various stakeholders, just communicating with them, which is also essential. And but my takeaway from the World Bank is that this would not happen. The poverty would not worsen and should improve, should be eliminated if the federal government pays attention to social welfare. Yeah. And people have already, spoken this much in Nigeria in the fallout of the fuel subsidy removal, and talks are still on. Labour is still meeting with the president's representative, with governments, generally speaking, and there's talk about buffers here and there, welfare packages here and there, and my call has been it shouldn't just be for public servants. There are people in the private sectors who, and of course, they are self-employed. There are people in the informal market who also need help. The former
every Nigerian needs help, actually.
Needs help, and the former administration, rode big on the issue of cash transfers. But honestly speaking, there were people who said maybe it wasn't sufficient enough. There were people who had issues with the amounts that was given. We hope that that will be improved somewhat, especially in the fallout of the fuel subsidy removal. And it's also good that the president spoke about everyone making sacrifices. And, yesterday, I recall that you were also saying that in as much as there's a general call for people to be patient with the federal government, but there is also a need for the federal government to also, on the other hand, and not just the federal government, for our leaders generally to also show the people that it's a collective sacrifice that everyone needs to make. It's not just the president, governors, and bringing it down to the lowest
down the
level
cost of government.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let people see that it's not going to be business as usual in the way governance has been the norm in Nigeria.
Absolutely. And the matter of, in fact, this putting together palliatives, I think the World Bank had gone ahead to say that some of the monies realized from the removal of fuel subsidy aim, for instance, the first month, because it's about a month now that the fuel subsidy had been removed, should be put into ensuring palliatives for Nigerians. And though the government has said that it is looking into the area of putting these monies into infrastructure development in the health sector and every other sector that needs development, but for now, we're looking at how to cushion the effect on Nigerians. We have seen some state governments go ahead to say that, you know what, we're increasing salaries to about 40,000 naira, talking about the Edo state government. We are looking at staffers going to work for 4 days or 3 days. Kwara State is saying 3 days. And they are also saying they will provide buses for transportation for persons who are going to one destination or the other, for schools and all of it. And they are also extending a hand to say that perhaps we might even have virtual classrooms. Now, the government, talking about the federal government alone, cannot handle this matter of providing buffers for people. So I believe that organizations, businesses, individuals should begin to look into how we can create buffers, how we can help ourselves to ensure that we find some form of level ground. We already know that there are those who pull resources together and say, let's come together and buy, you know, food items and all of it. Yeah, that's on the one hand, but what else can we do, especially for labor, who is insisting on the fact that it only suspended the strike, that it had not called off the strike? What kind of engagement is Labour having with some of the unions under it, such that, for instance, the Manufacturers Association, some other associations that can help Nigerians walk through this path in such a way that they do not feel the impact as much? As much as we are looking at the federal government, what else can we do on our level as leaders? What else can we do to help cushion the effect? Because yes, government has a plan. We all agree that fuel subsidy has to be removed because there were those who were benefiting, ripping Nigerians off. Should we continue on that path because of what it is on the ground? Do we need to make sacrifices? What is it do we really want at this point? But yes, government has decided it has to pull that off. How do we ensure that we have a balancing such that Nigerians do not really feel the pinch, is where I'm saying everyone has to come to the table to help the government.
Absolutely. And amidst the political dimensions of the federal government's action so far, of course, I think was it Punch now or Daily Trust? Some papers also had called it a war of words between the federal government and the opposition. The PDP also had a message while the president was making his message to Nigerians on Salah. The PDP also had a message, but in a different dimension, talking about the suffering of the people. But then the presidency fired back at the PDP, saying, you've been there, you guys were there for 16 years, and
you didn't have the guts.
See where you got us. And
you didn't have the guts to make some of these changes.
Absolutely. he brought out the
in
words.
his usual style. So yes, I'm not even surprised that he came in that manner.
Right. He said intellectual capacity, on the part of the then federal government under the PDP at the time. So it's understandable. I'm not exactly surprised about that. But what also intrigued me was a position by Alex Otte, the governor of Abia State, who was in support, at least from what I saw, he was in support of the federal government's decision so far on Forex, on the fuel subsidy removal. And he even had a message for his colleagues, his brother governors, saying that they too should also look inward while the federal government was looking at how to ameliorate the impact of the suffering, so to speak, of the fuel subsidy removal. Governors should also look inwards and see how they too could, help people. And I think that's a fair.
Also, I mentioned earlier that
he even said that this was something that should have been done days ago, as this is something that should have been done since like yesterday. As we've spoken, you just said something about the fuel subsidy removal. It's about time. It's long overdue.
Everyone. I'm shocked at their reaction now, talking about some of these opposition parties, because they all agreed in their campaigns that fuel subsidy has to be removed and that they were going to do that. In fact, within the first 100 days, some put dates to it, and they said that was some of the first things they were going to address when they get into government. So I am wondering what it is they felt they could have done differently to perhaps cushion the effect. Could they put that forward before the current administration to see how, if they will adopt that, if they are feeling, okay, you are not doing something right? Because at the end of the day, it's about Nigeria and Nigerians. It's not about the party you belong to or what religious sect you belong to. We are all feeling the impact. So how do we cushion the effect? If you can bring something to the table, I recall the president saying that he is going to ensure an open-door policy, and he called on everyone, be it in the opposition, to come to the table. If you have suggestions, you can come and make it, and he's ready to work with you. So if you feel that you have something different to put forward before this administration to ensure that it cushions the effect on Nigerians, you as an individual may not be feeling the impact, but you have relatives who might be feeling the pinch. So why not put it forward before the government to see if they will adopt it? And if they are not, then you can begin to raise your voice, from my perspective now, to say that, okay, we are putting forward a solution for you, but you are not looking in our direction. Why can't we have a roundtable conversation with regards to this? It is about Nigeria. I think it's important that we begin to look at the fact that beyond the political coloration, let's begin to look at the project Nigeria. How do we intend to move forward as a country? Yes, the opposition is there to put the current administration on its toes.
And they should.
But you should do that constructively. From my point of view, you can do that constructively by even putting forward suggestions to the administration. We have seen some states like Edo State and Kwara State. Why are other states not following that same line, towing that same line to see how they can cushion the effect for their citizens? I believe that the Project Nigeria should be what we look forward to at the end of the day, how to ensure that we get to the path of growth, because the president has said that he is ready to remove everything on our path to growth. That is what Nigerians want. They are not asking for anything major. Let me be able to eat. Let me have some level of security. I can sleep with my eyes closed, and whatever I need, I can easily access or afford it. Bottom line.
Absolutely.
That's what it is.
All right. Well, we'll see how it goes. But of course, Nigerians are also looking at the issue of, education. I think the World Bank also harped on that too, talking about let it not be that as a result of, this decision that the federal government has made, school children or parents will be unable to send their children to school.
Well,
so, these are all the
issues,
the
right?
federal government should consider.
Absolutely.